March 2029. So please review the software lifecycle support statement link that you see here on the screen to review the end of life for Catalyst Center software. Now, with that said, there are going to be some new options for you to refresh your hardware, either into the virtual appliance or the new DN3 hardware appliance. It comes with the same scale numbers as a medium, large, and extra large appliance. The main difference that you may notice here is that earlier we were doing M5 UC220s on DN2s with 44, 56, and 112 cores. But now we have M6 with 32, 56, and 80 cores. So please look at the updated data sheet on 237 and the DN3 specifications so that you're aware of all the specifications and all the scale numbers. You can also look at the new ordering guide for DN3 appliance. Please note that the scale numbers for virtual appliance on AWS and ESXi, they match with the DN3 medium appliance. So if you look at this list with 25,000 endpoints, there are around 1,000 network devices, 4,000 access points, 25,000 access control policies, and around 500 access contracts. So if you're planning to upgrade to any of these options, then please do keep an eye on the DN3 ordering guide and the virtual appliance ordering guide as well. Now let's look at deploying Catalyst Center on ESXi. So let's go over the specifications and scale. So Catalyst Center on ESXi 2374 requires you to get the OVA file, and the only image supported for the ESXi deployment is a Cisco provided OVA file, and that can be downloaded from software.cisco.com. You will need to get a license and register the license to your smart account, and then you'll be able to register your Catalyst Center. Next, you'll require at least 32 virtual CPUs, 256 GB of memory, storage of 3 terabyte solid state drive is recommended, storage bandwidth of 180 megabits per second, and IOPS between 2000 and 2500 is required. Now, if you are planning to do the local backups of your virtual appliance, we have the new feature on Catalyst Center ESXi available now, but please remember that you will need some extra storage. So you will need to add an extra drive when you're creating your virtual machine. For the server specifications, we support vCenter and ESXi from 7.0 and above, and processor needs to be an Intel CPU from 2.1 gigahertz and above. Hyperthreading needs to be enabled, RAM needs to be at least 264 GB, RAID can be any as long as it meets the bandwidth and IOPS requirements. And 2 virtual networks need to be created as well. And we'll see that later in the demo, how we can get both the enterprise and management network as part of this new release. So if you have like the enterprise that communicates with your managed devices and you have a separate management network for your Catalyst Center, you can get that, you can get both of them added. So please do take a look at these scale numbers that I mentioned here for fabric as well as non-fabric. We can go up to 25K endpoints, up to 2,000 devices for fabric, 2,500 sites for both fabric and non-fabric, and so on. Latency requirement stays the same as a physical appliance, which is less than 200 milliseconds, so that you get optimal performance for all the management or all the software upgrades and all the tasks that you will perform on your Catalyst Center. Now, for deploying Catalyst Center, there are 2 workflows that are available. First is the manual mode that can take up to like 60 to 90 minutes. And second one that we'll talk about after this one is the auto mode that takes lesser time than that. So this is the workflow that you see here right now is the workflow for the manual mode. So first you will be required as part of the workflow, first thing that you need to do is download the OVA file and then review your ESXi resources and then make sure that you meet all the storage and all the resource requirements that we discussed in the previous slide. Then you'll create 2 virtual networks for enterprise and management and then deploy your OVA file. Once it's completed, once you're following the, if you're following this manual workflow, once it's completed, the maglev wizard will show up, and there you will complete the configurations for either the maglev wizard or through the GUI wizard. So if you're familiar with the Catalyst Center installation, you will remember that you need to do the IP addressing for enterprise management, DNS, NTP, and all that stuff. So that, which is needed for the initial configuration. So that needs to be done within one of these two wizards, whichever you choose to do. And after that, your Catalyst Center on ESXi will be ready, and then you can start adding with the default credentials, and you can start doing the initial setup for the Catalyst Center. Now let's take a look at the ESXi in the auto mode. So here, this one is a lot quicker as compared to the manual mode. So here we have this launcher app, and this launcher app will basically verify the ESXi resources for you, and it will make your deployment a lot faster. You will still need to download the OVA file and the launcher from CCO. Next, you will prepare a config JSON file. And for that, also we have two options, whether you're doing a single interface or a dual interface, depending on that. So if you're also adding the management one, then you can pick the dual interface and do both the interfaces, enterprise and management. After that, it will execute the launcher. We'll execute the launcher from our command prompt. And for that, to execute the launcher, we have two options as well. One is the interactive mode, where you will be required to do step-by-step entries of all the settings that are embedded in the script. And but if you decide to do the silent mode, then it will just take the config JSON file from you, and it will deploy the Catalyst Center on your ESXi based on the information that you have added in that file. So after that, you'll get into your Catalyst Center UI. And for the first time login, the credentials are username admin, and password would be maglev1@3. And then you will be able to create a new admin user and complete the initial settings for your DNS center. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the new feature that we have set up on the Catalyst Center on ESXi is a physical disk. We still have the NFS option, and you can do it the same way as the physical appliance and configure your external server for NFS. But now we also have the option to add an extra disk and your physical disk on the virtual machine. So there's no need for extra server. It will really ease the deployment, or it will, we can say it will ease the backup and restore process, and it will help you with your data retention on the virtual machine itself. So you'll need to meet some storage requirements for that, depending on how much data you want to back up or how much data you want to keep. The backups take either assurance or automation data, or it can be both. For assurance data, you can say for 40 days incremental and can be up to 1.75 terabytes. Automation data daily will be about 50 GB. So if you plan for a physical disk, then you need to and you want to do both, then about 1.75 terabyte of assurance, plus consider the automation data of 14 days as well. So let's say that will be around 2.5 terabytes would be required to go over in a new hard disk drive. Now for the feature support, Catalyst Center on ESXi, as I mentioned earlier, will keep the feature parity for version 2.3.3 and 2.3.5, except for some of the following things that are that you see on the slide. Like for automation, we do not have support for wide area bonjour application, nor for the Catalyst Center traffic telemetry appliance. We still don't have support for Stealth Watch, and there is no support for FIPS yet as well. For wireless, we don't support Cisco user-defined network or Cisco umbrella. And for assurance, we cannot keep the data from the sensor 1800s. Some of the workflows that you see mentioned here are not supported, such as backup and restore using a snapshot function from vSphere. and the backup and restore from a Catalyst Center hardware appliance into a Catalyst Center on ESXi virtual appliance. And there are a few other things like IPv6 and security policy access. So these are the few things that are not supported. And let's look at limitations and restrictions. There is no 3-node clustering. As I mentioned earlier, you can only have one ESXi appliance, and we rely on the vSphere high availability features for that. It will not support some of the vSphere options, such as fault tolerance, suspending and resuming the VMs, or cloning the VMs itself. If you need a second instance of Catalyst Center, you will need to do that right from scratch. So snapshot as a backup is not supported, and we cannot get application telemetry as of now from a Catalyst 9500 series switches. The important thing to note through this release is that if you want to get the management interface, you can do that with the launcher interactive mode, or you can do that with the silent mode using the dual config JSON file, which has the specifications that you can add for dual NIC. Or you can add that manually into your virtual machine as well, and then reconfigure your virtual machine with the sudo maglev command. And in order to do that, you will need to go to the VM and add a new network interface, and then the configuration and all that stuff will take place. And we'll see that in the demo as well. Just wanted to bring that up. So with that, it's time for our first demo. So if you remember, I mentioned that we have two modes of deployment available, manual and auto mode. First, I want to do a quick demo on how you can deploy Catalyst Center on ESXi using the manual mode. So let me quickly pull up my ESXi host. Give me a minute.
And while we wait for Kavita to pull up the demo, I did want to cover some of the active or the current poll that's still currently active, where we asked what option of Catalyst Center are you currently running? About 62%, majority have selected do not have Catalyst Center installed. And then you have a tie between DN1 appliance and DN2 appliance at 16%. And then about 5% using Catalyst Center on ESXi. So thank you very much for that input. I'll keep that poll open for more time so that you guys, if you didn't have a chance to participate, you can still participate.
All right, sorry for the delay here. Give me 1 minute. So I hope everyone can see the ESXi host that I'm sharing. So we start with, this is my ESXi host, and I'm going to show you the manual mode of creating the Catalyst Center. So first thing that we need to do is click on create or register VM here. And this will start this 5-step workflow. And I'm going to pick deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file option. And I'm going to click next. So here I'm going to select the file, the OVA file. So the OVA file, I've already downloaded that file. So, and it's here in the E drive. I'm going to select that and upload it. And also give my Catalyst Center a name here, a VM. right? And then hit next. Now we'll be selecting the storage. So in our lab, we are using the data store 1 for these VMs. So I'm selecting that. And the fourth step is to choose the deployment option. So for the deployment options, we are going to be choosing the interface that we'll be working with, the interface that we have. Like for right now, I'm going to be choosing VLAN primary for enterprise. But if you have both, you can choose both two interfaces, one for management and one for enterprise. Then for disk provisioning, since this is a lab environment, I'm going with the thin provisioning. But if it's for the production environment, it's recommended to go for thick provisioning. And also make sure that the power on automatically is checked, option is checked as well. Now I'm going to click on next. And now it's giving me a summary of everything that it's going to deploy. So as soon as I hit finish, it's going to start deploying the Catalyst Center virtual machine for me. But I'm not going to do that. I already have a Catalyst Center installed here. But if you're doing that in your environment, that's what you're supposed to do. You're going to finish that. And after finishing that, you need to make sure that you turn on you power on your virtual machine as well. So this is the virtual machine that I have already created for the sake of this demo. And so once this VM has spin, once you have powered on the virtual machine, after that it will bring you to the maglev wizard that I mentioned, where you can enter all the details, all the IP addressing details, and all the subnet gateway details for Catalyst Center. And we are only doing this, we will only be doing the maglev part in the manual mode, but not in the auto mode. And we'll see that later in the next demo. So now if we, after creating this VM, we want to add like a new hard, like you can see here, there are a couple of hard disks here. There are 4 hard disks and there is one network adapter attached to this one. But if I want to make any changes, I can go to edit. I need to make sure that the VM is powered off when I'm doing any kind of changes in the settings. And I can add a hard disk here if I want, like a new standard hard disk, let's say for my restore and backup. And if I want to add a network adapter, I can do that here as well. So if I want, let's say VM network L2 VLAN, which is for my, which I want to add for my management. Now, after making the changes, you can hit save. And after you save it, make sure that you turn the VM on. You turn the VM on so that the configurations can be implemented. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to get into the maglev wizard again and enter the sudo maglev config update to configure the management interface. But this is the process for doing it manually. I have sped the process a little bit, but overall it's going to take you around 40-45 minutes to spin the VM and to reach to the Catalyst Center UI. So this is the process to do it manually. And other thing I want to share is how to do the Catalyst Center install using the auto mode, which is using the launcher mode, which is highly recommended. So let me quickly bring up my demo for that. Give me 1 minute. All right. So for the sake of time, I've created this recording for this. And as I mentioned, for the auto mode, we need to download the OVA, but we also need to make sure that we have downloaded the launcher as well. So in this case, and it has to be, the OVA has to be a Cisco specified OVA that you can download from Software Central. Now, I have already done that part and it's already in the downloads here. As you can see, the tar.gz file and the VA. So you see that it's going to give you 3 options: Linux, Mac, and Windows. I'm going to go with Windows. and I'm going to extract the file and copy and paste it on the C drive where I have the ESXi launcher folder, and I'm going to bring that up here. Now in the ESXi launcher folder, we have a couple of files. We have this config.json file that I was mentioning earlier. This config.json file has all the information that we need to provide in order to spin the Catalyst Center VM and in order to configure the Catalyst Center VM as well. So if you notice, it has our OVA path, and then it has our host name and the VM name, which is Catalyst Center Launcher ATX. It also has a data store 1. So this is what we are using in our lab. And it also has the enterprise network and management network, because we're using the dual NIC file. So it has both the information, both the interface information here. Then it also has a DNSC info, IP address, netmask, gateway, DNS, and all the needed information. So this is the reason why we do not this is what we do in the auto mode, so that we don't have to do the maglev configuration again, like how we would be doing if we are doing a manual mode. So so let's try to launch this launcher using the command prompt. I'm going to come to the command prompt and run the launcher from here. So so I'm going to execute the ESXi launcher from here, from the and I'm going to be running the launcher using the silent mode. So there are two options to run the launcher from. One is the interactive mode and one is the silent mode. In the interactive mode, you follow a step-by-step process where you're giving all the information and verifying all the information right now, or on the fly. But for the silent mode, we are giving this config.json file, which we saw earlier. So this config.json file already has everything mentioned here. So we do not need to give any more information again. The only thing we need to give is the host username, which is root, and we need to give the password and also the maglev password, and then confirm the maglev password. This is the only information that's needed. So once it starts running, it's going to check for the reachability, and after that it's going to give me like a you can say an deployment configuration summary. You'll see that in a bit. So this is the deployment configuration summary that it has given me. These are all the import information, Cisco DNS Center, VM configuration information. So if everything looks good, once everything looks good, we can just confirm with the Y and get started with the deployment. It's going to start importing OVA and start with the OVA deployment. And you can also try, you see it has started it's showing the progress as well, like it's 0.57% now. And you can also track the progress and the recent task in your ESXi host as well. And this process takes around 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit and bring it towards the end. So let's stop here. So now it's 99%. Once this setup is complete, the VM will be ready, and the launcher would also mention that the deployment is that it's completed. The deployment is completed, and after that we need to power on the VM. And there is no maglev step required now because we have already given all the information. We just need to power on the VM. And if we want to make any changes to the settings, like adding another hard disk drive, like what we saw in the earlier in the manual mode, so that's going to be done the same way. You have to first power off your VM, and then you have to click on edit the settings and make any changes there. It's exactly the same way. You just go to edit settings and you add a hard disk. or a network adapter if need be. In this case, we've already added 2, so we don't need it. And just save and then power on the VM again. So there is the additional maglev step in this auto mode can be skipped, and the deployment can be a little faster. Once you're done creating your VM and you're done configuring the Catalyst Center, you're done with the Catalyst Center configurations as well, it would then be time for us to start configuring the Catalyst Center, start doing the initial Catalyst Center configurations. So we can go to the GUI and we can get started. We can get started with those configurations as well. So let me give me a minute and let me pull that up as well, just to show you what are all the initial configurations that we can do. So this is the Catalyst Center virtual machine that I created using the ESXi, and I'm on the GUI now. I'm going to get started with the initial setup. So first I need to use the default credentials to log in. I click on login here and enter the default credentials, username admin and password maglev1@3. Once we do that, it's going to ask for our specific details now, so we can enter all the details like our first name, last name, and stuff. But remember, when you add the new account, the old one would be deleted. So let's add the role, the username, the email, passphrase, and confirm everything, and then we'll submit it. Now it's going to bring us back to the login page, and now we can use our new credentials to log into Cisco DNA Center. So now our DNA Center is ready. We can start by adding our cisco.com ID and password. And we can accept the end user license agreement. Click on next. We can get started with all the initial configurations, like we can start with the device discovery, and we can also verify the version here. What version is this DNA Center running? So we go to About, and yeah, it's running 237. And if you look at serial number, it has a VMware added in the beginning, so that's good. You can check the member ID as well. So that's fine. Now we can, next thing for initial setup we can do is go to software management and check if there are any available applications to install. Make sure the system is up to date. Then we can go to System 360 and check if all the services are up and running or not. So you can see here that all the services are up and running. Node status is healthy, so everything looks good here. The other thing to check here could be the what we can do is go to settings, and we can add the cisco.com credentials here, and also our smart account details as well. Add those here as well as part of the initial setup. Once that is done, we can also, if we want, run few validation tests as well. If we go to System Health, we can click on the tools and go to validation run and do a new validation run. Give it a name and what kind of selection you want to do based on your preference. Virtual appliance infrastructure status check or a virtual appliance scale test, and just run the test. And this is going to take some time, these tests, and you can see that they are in progress. If you want to view how is it going, you can click on view status and check the progress for these tests. But overall, this is the way you will complete the initial configuration once you have access to Catalyst Center UI. So that brings us to the end of the ESXi demo. And let me now get back to the presentation. Give me a minute. Okay. So now we're going to get started with deploying to check how to deploy Catalyst Center on AWS. So for Catalyst Center on AWS, as you know, it's a cloud-based solution. The Catalyst Center appliance is embedded on an EC2 instance, and the supported option is R5A 8 large. It resides within a VPC, virtual private cloud, within a specific subnet that's associated to it. And this VPC will include the security groups, subnets, and the Catalyst Center AMI that has been defined already. So we'll be communicating between your to your enterprise between the VPN gateway from AWS through either IPsec connectivity, or we can do direct connect, or we can do SD-WAN or Colo to your customer gateway, and that will connect the enterprise so that and that's how you'll be able to manage the devices from AWS Catalyst Center into your enterprise smoothly. Now, the specifications, as I mentioned, for these are R5A large appliance on AWS. They are very similar to the ones that we saw before for ESXi. It requires 32 virtual CPUs, 256 GBs of memory, storage, and everything is same as to what we saw in ESXi. And in terms of feature parity as well, it goes along with 233 and 235 for automation assurance and SDA as well. Now so like ESXi, we have two options here as well to deploy Catalyst Center on AWS. We have an auto mode and we also have a manual mode. So if we look at the manual mode first, the manual mode is recommended for power users of AWS, meaning if you are highly familiar with AWS architecture, then manual mode can be a good option for you. If you're familiar with, or you have already defined, you know how to define VPCs, subnets, VPN gateways, or transit gateways on AWS, and everything that's needed for the Catalyst Center virtual deployment, then manual configuration, you can do that. And that can be done using the CloudFormation template. So security parameters needs to be configured manually. The backup and restore needs to be done manually as well. So that again, I mentioned it's for folks who are already have familiarity with AWS architecture. But Cisco recommends to go with the Launchpad application, which comes with the auto mode. It requires a very minimal knowledge on AWS, and it will do everything for you. It will set up all the infrastructure for AWS. It will set up the VPCs, the EC2 instance, transit gateway, customer gateway. Basically, everything that you will need to configure your Catalyst Center will be done for you automatically. All the security parameters, security groups, the ports that needs to be opened, backup, restore, everything. So this option is highly recommended. Now, deploying Catalyst Center on AWS using Launchpad. Let's see. So first thing that we need to do here is to access the Launchpad application. You can access the Launchpad application either by downloading the software and run the server client on your computer with a Docker container, or you can access it through a hosted Launchpad through browser dna.cisco.com. All you need to have is access to your AWS account. Again, that needs to be in a supported region. So make sure, also make sure that like you have the permission, required permissions to create those new instances as well. So everything will be done automatically, but the account that you will be using must have all the required permissions needed to create the new instances. So here are the steps that one needs to take when they're planning to deploy Catalyst Center on AWS using the Launchpad. These steps again would be done automatically, but this is what would be done using the Launchpad application. So it's good to know that these are these are the steps that will be taken. So once you have the Launchpad, it will start by configuring your AWS architecture, the VPN details, the EC2 instance profile, and the backup target also, which is like a separate instance. It will also create IPsec configuration for you so that you can download that and you can apply that on your customer gateway. And on your enterprise side, you will need at least one router or firewall as well. Then you also need to open the required ports. Some of them you will need will be secure shell, HTTPS, UDP ports. So the complete list, you can check that in the deployment guide, that which all ports are needed to be opened. But all that would be done again automatically. After that, it will do the network connectivity check and make sure that the tunnel is up and running. And then you can start working on your Catalyst Center configurations and make sure to complete all the settings like the initial settings like DNS, FQDN, CLI password, and all that stuff. Now, deploying Catalyst Center on AWS manually. So for the manual option, the process will be exactly same, but everything that I mentioned before that needs to be done manually here. So you will have to create your VPC, security groups, VPN subnets, everything manually, deploy them using CloudFormation template, configure your customer gateway as well, and verify the connectivity to the AWS VPC. And then finally configure the Catalyst Center after that as well and complete all the required configurations. So with that, it's time for our second poll. Are you planning to refresh your Catalyst Center? If yes, then to what? To DN2 appliance, DN3, or you're planning to refresh it to AWS or ESXi? Please let us know, and we'll wait for your answers. Now let's look at a quick demo on deploying Catalyst Center on AWS using the Launchpad app. I'll be showcasing you the auto mode that uses the Launchpad app. So give me a minute. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm having some issues with WebEx since morning. It's okay. This is again a quick recording that I have done to showcase the AWS using the Launchpad. We'll be doing it through Cisco.dna portal. And if you go to the hamburger icon here, you'll see there's a VA Launchpad. And it's going to ask for your AWS account ID, access ID, and the secret access key. So you give all the information and remember that you have the required access to create all the instances. Once you do that, you're going to click on Authenticate. And it's going to bring you to this dashboard. So here you can see on the top left, this is the region that I'm using, US East 2. And the drop-down shows all the supported regions. So make sure you check that as well. After that, we'll click on Create New VA Pod. and it's going to start this wizard. This is like a 3-step wizard. It starts with configuring AWS infrastructure. You'll first give the VA pod a name, and then the availability zone that you're in. AWS VPC CIDR. This is where this is where the AWS CIDR will reside. Yeah, and then you'll also give the on-prem connectivity, like your enterprise firewall or router, like your customer gateway IP address, the VPN vendor. In this case, I'm using OpenSwan. But there is a drop-down list that you can see here. And then you also give the platform, the software, and fill all the information and just click next. And then you start configuring your AWS infrastructure. And this process would take around 20 minutes, I think. And once it's completed, I mean, once all the checks are done, once all the infrastructure configurations are completed, this ring that you see on the right-hand side is going to turn green completely. And then you can click on proceed to on-prem configurations to go to the next step. See that in a minute. So proceed to on-prem configurations. And once we do that, it's going to bring us to the second step of the wizard, which is configuring your on-premise configuration. So configuring the enterprise firewall or router. Here you can see that you will be able to download this configuration file. Once you do that, you'll see that this file includes all the IPsec tunnel information that you would need. And you just need to make the required changes based on your network side. And this tunnel information, there are 2 tunnel information here. Once you add all this information as per your need, the tunnel should come up here. And then you can click on go to dashboard and then create or manage Cisco DNA Center. And then create new Cisco DNA Center and then provide the enterprise DNS, FQDN, and the CLI password as well. So you can see that we have the IP address here as well for DNA Center. So we need to verify that as well. And once we validate everything, then we can click on validate. So we'll go to our, we can check our DNS server and make sure that we have an A entry next to it. So it shows that there is a host A entry here. So this looks fine. Now we just give our CLI password. And we're going to click on validate. So this is the summary of everything, and then you can start the Cisco DNA Center configurations. This process will take around 10 minutes for all the configurations to complete. Here we have the SSH key and a PEM file. Make sure that you download that as well. This is the only time that you'll have access to these 2 files. So download that, and then once the configuration is completed, again this ring would turn completely green, and then you're ready to get started or manage your DNA Center. You can get started with the initial configurations. On the AWS console here, you will see that there are 2 instances created, R5 8 large, which is the DNAC instance, and T3 micro, which is created for the backup. So, so if we, so now we have the DNA Center IP address as well. So we can just copy paste that in the browser, and then we can just get started with doing our initial configuration that we saw in the last video. It's going to be the same. You'll just get started with the default credentials, admin, maglev1@3, and then provide your own information, and then complete the initial configurations as we saw in the last demo, basically discovery, software management, settings and updates and everything. So this brings us to the end of this demo, and now let's get back to the presentation. We'll be wrapping the session with some key points to remember. Let me pull that slide. Okay. So a couple of things to remember. Catalyst Center on AWS and ESXi will help you speed up your deployment. These vSphere and AWS high availability options, they will ensure that the continuous operation of your Catalyst Center is ensured. You can reduce the infrastructure cost by leveraging these pay-as-you-go options. And AWS provides a secure infrastructure that will support the compliance requirements such as SOC, PCI, DSS, etc. Then we will also share with you the available documentation, the additional resources like virtual appliance ordering guide, admin guide, deployment guide, and Catalyst Center ESXi release notes. Then we also have Catalyst Center release 2374 release notes, user guide, and upgrade guide available. Compatibility matrix and how to upgrade your Catalyst Center guide. So we'll share all that information with you also. We also have the AWS cost calculator. So that is something very good to look at as well before you start with the AWS deployment. So that brings us to the end of our session. And I think we have 5 minutes to get started with any Q&A, any questions that we have.
Thank you very much, Kavita. So again, as a reminder, if you have a question for our presenter, please go ahead and type it in the Q&A panel. Okay. First question I have here is, how much does Catalyst Center VA for ESXi cost?
So the Catalyst Center VA software on ESXi is provided to the customer at no charge, as mentioned earlier in the presentation. It's included in the Catalyst Essential and Catalyst Advantage software subscription. There is an annual support package for Catalyst Center. So, and that is recommended that it's recommended that when you're placing the order, you add that support package as well. So, but for the Catalyst Center VA, there is no cost associated.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next question. Does Catalyst Center on ESXi offer high availability support?
So Catalyst Center on ESXi does provide high availability support. It is an integral part of the vSphere platform, but it follows a vSphere platform high availability features. So for now, it only supports the high availability at host level failures.
Thank you. Next question. Is Catalyst Center VA compatible with ESXi cloud servers like Azure VMware Solution, Google Cloud Services, or even AWS Cloud?
So as of now, we do not provide support for ESXi hardware hypervisors on cloud platforms. However, we currently offer a native version of Catalyst Centers, specifically which is designed for AWS Cloud. The Catalyst Center VA for Microsoft Azure Cloud is currently in the planning and development stage. And in the coming months, we'll be able to provide more information on the planned release dates, but that option is not available yet.
Thank you very much. All right, next question. How much time does it take to deploy the Catalyst Center VM on ESXi?
So for manual mode, creating the VM, you can access the maglev setup page. As I mentioned earlier, it will take around 45 minutes. And then another 60 minutes for install or pre-manufactured VA ready. So, but with the launcher, you can make it in around 70 minutes and get access to the Catalyst Center UI directly. You do not need to go to maglev or web UI to complete any configurations.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, what type of customer deployment is the best fit for Catalyst Center on ESXi?
So Catalyst Center customers with fewer than 1,000 switches or routers and fewer than 4,000 access points should consider Catalyst Center VA. You must also check the scaling specifications. And this is true if like if you have already adopted VMware ESXi virtualization within their organization. So, but please do take a look at the scaling and specifications guide.
Awesome, thank you very much. And then there's a question about if today's session is being recorded, and the answer is yes. Let me put that information in the chat, so give me one sec. We also live stream this session, so you can view that live stream recording actually immediately upon exiting today's session. I'll also have a post-webinar discussion thread where you can ask follow-up questions, and you can acquire a copy of the slide deck. I'll be uploading it there shortly, so let me get that posted. All right. Kavita, I think that's all the time we have for questions today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
That's all from my side. Thank you everyone for joining. Hope you found the session useful. And thank you to all the panelists. And thank you to you, Carlo. Thank you everyone. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kavita. Again, I placed the link to where the post-webinar discussion thread will be available. So if we didn't get to your question, do post it in there. We'll go ahead and I'll forward those to the panelists so we can get those answered along. Yep, with all that. So I just want to thank everyone again for joining us today. Thank the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future webinars, please do visit the Cisco Learning Network. Thank you again, and we'll see everybody next time.